With the mic.
This year talks about two topics about Shavuot. One about Shavuot and one related to Shavuot. The first one is the idea of having milchus on Shavuot, and the second one is the idea of Chovevei. So in each topic there are different aspects of it that are discussed. In the milchus on Shavuot, we have where did the whole idea of eating milchus come from? Then we have the idea of what kind of milchus are we supposed to have, and then there's a question of if you're allowed to make kiddush on a milchus meal, and if you're allowed to make a kiddush on milk, and then there's if you're allowed to how do you put together the meat and the milk together. And then in the topics of Chovevei, you have what's the whole Isra, what's the Isra of Chovevei, what's the heter, and why are Chassidim careful in the idea of Chovevei. So now the question of where the whole idea of eating milchus on Shavuot comes from. There are more rights that just like on Pesach, we have the two foods corresponding to the carbon Pesach and the carbon Chanukah. So on Shavuot, which on Shavuot is Shtei Alechem, we eat two separate foods to correspond to the Shtei Alechem, two separate foods, one milk plate and one plate. The Alter writes in Shulchan Aruch that for many Achrenim, we have many different reasons why the Mehavim come from, and from there became the Minhag Avosseinu and Minhag Avosseinu Therion, and that's why nowadays it's a custom by everyone to have milchus on Shavuot. The Moshe says that in Parshas Pinchas, when it talks about Shavuot, it says in the and that for that reason we have milchus on Shavuot. The Menei Samara brings down that challah is usually for kids, and kids correspond to bittul, and that shows that Torah, which Shavuot is all about Torah, which shows that Torah should be learned in a way with bittul, and that's why we have challah. The Mishnah Berurah writes that we know after the Yidden accepted the Torah, so they didn't have the inflation that came and weren't available because they had to be kosher, and therefore the only thing they had was milk and kalim, and that's why we have milk and kalim to correspond to that. And so how do we get to know that separate kalim? Before Mount Torah, they should have been using the same kalim for milk and inflation. So before, when the Yidden left Mitzrayim, they knew that they were coming to Sinai, so they started preparing themselves. And one of the things they did was they already made separate kalim, and therefore they had milk and kalim which didn't come in contact with meat. Then we have the question of what type of meal should we have? Is the idea that we should have bread, which is bread which is kneaded with milk, or we should have regular bread, which is eaten with milking foods. So the Alter brings in Shulchan Aruch that the minhag is to have bread, which is actually kneaded with milk, and he brings B'Shem Shalah that it's you have regular bread together with milk foods. Then are we allowed to make kiddush? Are we allowed to make kiddush on milk? So the Shimon writes the Shimon writes because of in the name of many Achrenim that for kiddush you specifically have to have kiddush on milk. But he brings another opinion that we see in Gemara, that you're not allowed to walk in the base of you're not allowed to walk in the base of English drunk. And if you do, you're fine. Now we find that the milk of the olden days had a certain heaviness to it, that it was able to intoxicate your mind in a certain way. So it brings over there that if you come to the base of English intoxicated with this milk, so then you're going to be chayav just as well. So he brings down that if you're chayav for milk in the way that you're chayav for wine and milk, so then you can make kiddush on milk just like you want to kiddush on wine.
Being that Shavuot is a Yom Tov, and we know on Yom Tov there's eating of Sukkot Yom Tov, which is meat. In addition to having a milchik meal on Shavuot, one also has to have meat on Shavuot. The question is, if you're going to have a milchik meal, how are you going to have a fleshik meal? When should you put it in? Should it be at night? Should it be the same day? So the Shalom Kadesh writes, a person should have a milchik meal first, after davening. Afterwards he should bench, and then have a fleshik meal. The Shulchan Aruch writes that a person has to wait 6 hours after eating meat, and an hour after eating milk. So, however you fit that into your schedule, you should do that. There's no real specific directive for Shavuot. The Sefer Kallah writes that a person, when he gets excited about a certain food, his stomach speeds up the digestive system, so he doesn't have to wait the full 6 hours. And he can have it a little bit earlier, just he has to make sure that there's nothing left. Any meat residue in his mouth has to be taken out. However, he writes in another place that in Shavuot, the Yidden were very careful because that's the day that you're in Makabel prayer. And as such, on Shavuot itself, you should wait the full 6 hours. The Yitzchock writes, if a person goes to sleep, that also helps speed up the digestive system, and therefore, again, does not have to wait the 6 hours if he goes to sleep. The Chovevei Torah Yarchei, he says that his Rebbe wouldn't have meat on a day which he had milk, and milk which he had meat. On a day which he would have milk, he wouldn't have meat. And therefore, sometimes, if needed, he would have milk during the day and meat at night. So he would have the milk for Shavuot at night, and the next day he would have only fleshik meal. The Yitzchock Franfurter, the Rebbe writes in an answer to somebody, that we know that there's the idea that we have to wait 1 hour after we eat milchik. However, he also writes in the letter that he's not sure if that's for Yechidus Skula or if that applies to everybody. But generally, we should wait a full hour after eating milchik. Cholostam, many people have a question: why do Litvish people use it? Why are considered very makbid not to eat it? So it says in Shulchan Aruch Kuf Tes Vav that this is also completely. He goes a little into discussion of what it exactly means to see it. But the idea is there has to be 100% certainty that no other milk was mixed into the milk at the time that it was made, if the Yid doesn't make it. So if the Yid doesn't see the milk, it is awesome. There's a famous hadith from Moshe Feinstein, which everybody I'm sure heard about. He brings in Igros Moshe Simin Ben Zion, and he brings also another letter in Yeridei Gimel Simin Tes Zion. The first Simin, in his Shuvah, he writes, nowadays, the companies, that's in 1915, he writes this letter, so you can imagine it's a lot stricter now. But he writes that companies
1954.
Sorry, 1954. He writes over there that due to the fact that companies have to be USDA approved, and as such, when they write that something is 100% cow's milk, if it's not, they can get fined, and they could technically be closed down. I think Rabbi Barris said the fine was $25, so tells you how strict that is. And I know that I have a Litvish neighbor who lives across the street from me. He's a big rabbi. He eats challah. However, the Igros Moshe, he writes, this head that we have of an ansadi that we could technically hold that we see the milk being produced is due to the fact that there's a strong fine, which was leveled against companies which do mix milk. However, he writes in another tshuva that heter which he gave, that only applies to B'shas Chag, the people which there is no other possible way for them to have kosher milk and they need that actual milk. But this heter should never be used by somebody who has access to Chovevei Torah, and I just heard a story a minute ago, how a person from labor came over with Moshe and he told him he eats chalav akum. And Moshe says, who let you eat chalav akum? He says, you did. Moshe answers, and I didn't. Somebody who lives in Lakewood, he has no reason whatsoever to have chalav akum. So that heter is very strict in certain areas. No, it should not be used, especially for those of us living from communities, etc. Chassidim in general, they're always very mocked about mitzvahs. They always go with the Mishnah. That's what a chassid is. So, and this Indian specifically, they're very strict about. There's a story with Nachman Chernobyl that he was once, they were placed before him a milk dish, or chalav akum itself, and he didn't consume it. They asked him afterwards, how did you not consume it? How did you know that there was an issue with it? He said, it says in the Mishnah, his shot was that something which a yid doesn't need, he's not going to see. And as such, he didn't see the milk and therefore he didn't consume it. But the idea is when a yid is watching the milk being produced, that itself is what gives the milk its kosherness. There's a story that the Frierdiker brings in Sefer Ma'amar, that somebody came to the Alter once and told him his son-in-law was up until very recently a big Talmid Chacham, a Lamdi, a Shemayim, and very recently, out of the blue, he started having sickness in the morning. He started doubting if Hashem was real, or maybe it's the right thing, not the right thing. Alter said it must be that he accidentally consumed chalav akum, and therefore these thoughts were entering into his mind. Alter then gave him a tikkun of what to do, but the idea is that chalav akum, in addition to it being aser, even with the heter, still causes a shveikus in the morning. And that's why Chassidim were very makbid not to have it, and still are very makbid not to have it. The Rebbe writes in a letter in Igris that he said, the lashon is mashamati v'negeya l'chalav akum v'eres shveikus in the morning. Even with the heter, even anything you can try, chalav akum, if according to Ramesh's heter, it still is ma'oderes shveikus in the morning, and as such, no one should ever use it. And if maybe in a Shas Chag there is the heter, but it still causes shveikus in the morning. Presented by myself and Binyomin Lerner, we'd like to say a special thank you to Randy Bortang for putting a lot of effort and for helping us.
As we're about to wait 1 minute. I just had one thing. First of all, beautifully presented. Both of you. That's why I had one thing. The chalav akum, to clarify a little deeper. There's two issues with Ramesh's head. There's one issue, or you could say there's three issues. One issue is, did Ramesha mean his heter as strong as the belt quotes him as meaning? The other issue is the Ne'emanut, which means Ramesha's basic chiddush is that the Re'iyah could be substituted by Yediyah. You know something, you saw something, but if you know for a fact, then that replaces seeing. So for example, Ramesha gives a heitim. So what would be if there was one entrance car room? There was one cow, you know for a fact that cow is a kosher cow. And a guy goes in with an empty bucket that has not one single drop. He went into the room, a yid wasn't with him, milked the cow and brought it out. Can you drink that milk or not? A yid did not watch the chaliva, but there's not even the smallest remote possibility that something else is there. So this is the main basis for a Moshe's chiddush. Now, Pi Nigla, all I need to have that a yid sees it is the chazaka, that it's for sure kosher. So that Moshe now took this a step further and said that if you have USDA inspectors, government inspectors, which are giving fines if you're going to mix anything but cow's milk, so then that replaces, it's as if we know for sure without seeing. So in this point, people challenge Ramosha right away, and Ramosha has a follow-up tshuva that maybe a $25 fine is not big enough. Or there's other challenges. The other challenges is that you can mix in just a couple of droplets of chazer milk, just a couple of droplets that almost is undetectable, and those droplets are going to make that milk take much, much longer to become sour. So which means if you have a company that has tankers very far away, where they store their milk, and they have to transport it, they have a very strong reason for business to just mix a couple of droplets, almost an undetectable amount, because it's going to stop the milk from souring. So again, 2 points so far mentioned. Number one, lav dafka Moshe meant his head as strong as he said it. Because Moshe himself later clarified that he only meant Shas Chak. He said himself that he's not the Chol Yisrael. He said himself that a Moshe Chinuch should spend the extra money even if they have a tight budget, because it's a bad Chinuch message if you just say that all milks are kosher. So that Moshe himself was only being mattered in a limited sense. Even when it was mattered in that limited sense, it's based upon this Chinuch that you can replace the Iyah with like a chazaka, Yidiyah. And then the argument is this chazaka strong enough? Is the $25 fine as big as it was in those days? As much as money meant in those days, it wasn't, maybe it doesn't equal up, maybe it's more profitable to mix the milk. The other point is, which is today, the government stopped checking if it's cow's milk, which means I'm not such a big bucket, but there's basically 2 types of inspections. There's government inspections and there's farm inspections, which is done by a different organization. The government changed their policy in the last whatever amount of years, I don't know, I can't be quoted, and they stopped checking what's inside. So today a farmer could mix in whatever other milks he wants, if he wants to mix in camel milk or anything else, and it's not going to be stopped by the government. The only thing is, there's a different organization that does inspections, some type of farm inspections, and they do something. And long after, Moshe would have been matter to rely on their inspections. But now point number 3, that when it comes to Chassidim say that even if in that scenario, that there was one cow in the room, one entrance to the room, you inspected the bucket before the guy went in, and the bucket had nothing else, it was absolutely clean. And the guy was clean of the cow. But a Yisrael wasn't re'eyu, that milk a chassid wouldn't drink. Even though there's no shayach, it's not shayach that there's other milk inside. But a Chal Yisrael, a Pnimi Sinyan, has to be that a Yisrael sees the Chalim. And to that degree, it has an effect. It's one of the rayas that is brought down of Pnimi Sinyan, that you see that the Iyah is loyal, that the Iyah, the actual looking itself, the status of a Yid, watching the Khalifa is Mishana the Metzias, whether this milk that's going to be consumed is healthy for your neshama, or chas v'shalom, the opposite, that is going to face in the munah, like Yitzchock mentioned. Okay. Yossi? Don't wait. Give them a video.
You're doing it?
Where's Yitzchock? Yitzchock, want to change, make his thing?